felt real heart chakra-ish today. Greener pastures, all that good whatnot. The ability to recognize, the ability to respond through disorder, shock, and it's different. It's discipline, and it's arousing. What arouses you and gets you riled up? What brings you into that space? When we're stuck in this space of ourselves, we tend to react. We tend to be stuck in this reacting and assimilating. That means becoming what it is that best suits the reaction, instead of reacting and learning the art of recognition and really adapting to the terrain. Use an example. Nice simple example. You at the gym, or you out and about, and somebody looks at you and gives you this look, and you get excited. Now, we're going to build into that, but before we build into that, I wanted to say, Divine Rise, Grand Rising, blessed be to the day. May it be everything you require to create everything you desire, especially on this day of 10. This Thursday is how you shape yourself. So we go into the aspects of you sitting there and you've been going to the gym, doing your workouts, or you've been really standing strong in your balancing yourself or bringing yourself into working on yourself. You've been really doing that internal work, and somebody notices. Somebody notices that you've been putting in your work. You've been putting in your work. The human nature in us is to, since we're not used to that happening to us, we get excited. You'll naturally get excited. But here is the point of the key to help you recognize and adapt to the situation instead of reacting and moving off of an impulse. A lot of things that you mess up in your head, a lot of the things that you do inside of your head, a lot of the things that you rocking with inside of your head is worse than anything that's happening within the aspects of that reality within your space. A lot of the times, because you are not in symmetry, you're not in that symmetrical fashion with yourself. That means you're not in balance with yourself. You're not in understanding that balance. We step into these places under an assumption. So if somebody is like, for example, if I go to the gym, if I'm going to the gym and I'm doing my workouts, I got a mask on, got my breathing mask on, I'm in there doing my workout, I'm really only in there for the gym. I'm only in there for the gym. I'm only in there for my gym alchemy, working on myself, programming my day, becoming the program director. So anything outside of that, I am now able to recognize, and instead of me reacting to whatever happens, whatever's said, whatever's done, I know how to feed from the energy in that space. This is one of the keys when you're doing your internal work and that integration of your soul, you're integrating yourself, and you're learning how to go into situations, because every time something triggers you, we always talk about these triggers, every time something triggers you, it lays the groundwork to take your energy away from you. Every time you go into a situation and you get excited, you get aroused, it gives you this arousing shock factor. That is the lead for the direction of how your energy is going to flow. If I'm doing it based on recognition, if I'm doing it based on adaptation to the environment, that's me being in my state of me being aware of the state where I'm at. That way I know when to walk away. I know when not to. That means I can listen to myself. This is all into the aspects of your intuition. A lot of times when we come in, I remember coming into spaces and I would literally react to whatever was in that space based on the assumption of something that I was missing in myself. The attention that I wasn't giving myself, I got used to the attention from others because on the internal aspects of myself, in my shadow work, working on the inner child, there were things that happened to me that I didn't have attention, or I had this external idea or assumption of why I didn't get the attention that I needed to get. From the aspect of maybe my clothes weren't fly enough, or maybe because I was fat, or because my hair wasn't a certain way. All of these certain aspects all of these things play out in the way that you're coming into this recognition. This is all in the aspects of you being honest with yourself in certain situations. That you really have to start looking at people around you and really seeing yourself in them based on what is their purpose in your life. What purpose do they hold in your life? What is their assignment in your life? What is their purpose? What is their assignment? It's not based on you giving them a purpose or you giving them an assignment, because that's a lot of times what we do based on reaction. We give them a purpose, we give them an assignment. Even when it comes into your family, at this point, like you going through your healing work and now you got to address things with your family, you have to really start looking at them as what is their purpose and what is their assignment. What their assignment is always prevalent, their purpose is always prevalent based on the things that you either have not dealt with or that you keep trying to jump over. You allow yourself to go into certain situations to get a certain feeling, to get this certain rush. It's all based on staying separate from your true self. As long as there's still traumas that you haven't dealt with, you're always gonna fight. You're naturally doing what you're supposed to be doing unconsciously. And when you're doing it based on, we've been going over the last couple of weeks, when you're going through this space based on fear, when you're basing yourself on fear, your lower self, the demiurge aspect, and now you're coming into the space of realizing that you were asleep, so you're now in that demigod stage, so you're in your half-god stage. That means if you're of the feminine aspect, and you got to understand your masculine aspect, you're still a demigod. Until you bring these into balance and have that divine union, you're still a demigod. That means you're only at half capacity of your energy. You still have biases and things you got to work through. When you are submitting to your urges, this is the aspect of when you're submitting to the urges based on your humanity, this is what makes the demiurge aspect. The things that are against the spiritual encompassing. The materialism, being stuck within something based on the external aspect. This is what we mean by materialism. When you're stuck on, I have to do this, this, and this before I can even get to myself. I got to get this done. I got to get this done. I got to make sure this is happening before I can even sit down and get to myself. That is you committing to the demiurge aspect inside of yourself. You're submitting to your urges. So a lot of times when we come into our higher state of ourselves, that I've noticed whenever I do a class, when I'm doing classes, when I'm doing therapy sessions, a lot of us think that we have to suppress our urges. The same way that, because we're under the same thought process of we're suppressing our trauma. The same way that you suppress the trauma, the longer you suppress the trauma, the longer you suppress the urge. The stronger the urge. The stronger the urge, the more that you suppress the trauma. You suppress that thought process. You're suppressing aspects of yourself. So I sit there and light the incense. Bringing ourselves into this space a lot of times, this is one of the spaces where when I'm telling people, it's not about suppressing anything. You're not suppressing anything. And when I mean by anything, I don't mean by anything. That means any emotion that comes up, you're not suppressing it. You're learning how to bring it into that symmetry or that balance so you can take it to the higher level, taking it to the aspects of your higher self. I always go by this book, one of the best books one of the best books. I actually I did a lecture on it earlier on last year. Sex 101. When I did my interpretation and a breakdown of the Way of the Superior Man. The Way of the Superior Man teaches you from the masculine principle of the knowledge that you're absorbing and how to open up into a space. Opening up into a space. So similar to like when you're doing breath work and you start taking them 10 deep breaths and you start charging the blood, bringing the blood back into a positive sense. You start bringing your breath. So now you're breathing. So now you're learning your concentration. You're opening yourself up into that space. It's about opening yourself up into this space. Understanding that through the disorder, understanding that through the shock value, whatever comes up that's supposed to give you a shock value, how are you responding to it? It's all about your response, not your reaction. A lot of us look at things when we come into something that gives us a shock. It is shocking us, and we're used to reacting to something. We're used to moving on the emotional impulse instead of being able to sit there in that space and allow that energy to come in, allow ourselves to sit there with it. It come into recognition and recognizing what does this emotion that's coming up in this space mean to me? What emotions are coming up in this space? Am I angry? Am I sad? Am I upset? Like, what is the depth of these emotions? As we start working on the depths of these aspects of these emotions, we learn how to control and become intimate with our power in that space. You'll know when you're evolving, you'll know when you're shifting, that when you go back into certain spaces and your reaction is totally different. You're not reacting anymore. You're simply in a state of response. You're like, okay. It doesn't phase you the way it used to get to you. And then as you start doing this in the environments, the conduits in the environments are going to change. The way you're going to start noticing that a lot of times, I've noticed a lot of times in my space that now that I'm in the space that I'm in, a lot of the things that used to upset me, irritate me, get to me, is not about suppressing them. I'm able to speak up on them. I'm able to speak about them. I'm able to bring them into fruition. I'm able to bring them into the space. I'm able to talk about it. Even if it gets me a little, even if it stems my emotion a little bit, I'm learning less and less on reaction or based on assumption. And I'm actually sitting there being able to inform and respond to the space. Ask the questions. Being honest with myself. The more and more you become honest with yourself, the more open you become with yourself, the more vulnerable you will become with yourself. The less that you're going to allow other things to make you rise. Because this is what happens in this space, because you do it unconsciously all the time. You look for something to give you a rise. You look for something to get you upset. You look for something to make you mad. You look for it. Even if you're doing it, even when you're doing it unconsciously, you're used to that being in that space. You've moved in that realm with these channels that I talked about yesterday, with these channels, these emotional channels that you have not dived into that void of these emotional channels to understand certain aspects about yourself. So when you're in a position, when you're in a space, it can be the best space for you at that time to learn about yourself, learn how to learn the love of yourself, learn these aspects. But you're stuck on the emotional channels. As I've said before, you can be in your current state right now at the ripe old age of 37 in your 30s, but the way that you're reacting, because you haven't recognized certain aspects in yourself, you haven't built the discipline you haven't learned discipline within yourself, and that growth and that discomfort, you'll react to when you were 8 years old. You react like the 7-year-old, the 12-year-old, the 14-year-old self, because that trigger is leading you to where it began, or where it start, where one of the many causes or one of the many effects of that space. It's time for you to give yourself recognition. It's time to give yourself recognition. It's time to give yourself the ability to adapt to all these situations. It's time to allow yourself to heal. This is the main point. It's time to let yourself heal. A lot of times we get so bogged down with everything outside of us not doing what we wanted to do that we fear the aspects of us actually. What will we look like if we were healed? What would I look like if I was in balance? What would me being balanced look like? These are some of the first manifestations that you're going to come into. These are some of the first manifestations. These are some of the the groundbreaking foundations to how you manifest things into your life. You can't skip. You skipping these steps, you're going to hurt you. You skipping these steps, the process is going to take forever because you focused on the result. I learned how to do this, or I opened up this and I did this, so now I can use that to go to here. And now you're wondering why you can't seem to go further, because you have to define it within yourself. It's all about defining it within inside of yourself first. Everything outside of you will give you everything you want. But when it comes time for it to give you what you need, it'll never be able to do it because you have not defined your needs within inside of yourself. You have not defined those aspects of the truth inside of yourself. Every time, everything out, you can get everything you want in the external outside of you. Everything here, you can get everything you want. But when it becomes time to get what you need in order to move forward and establish your value, establish your quality and your desire, until you define your needs within yourself, until you become intimate with your own power, your lineage, your line, the things about yourself, in the deep, in that vulnerability inside of yourself, nothing's gonna get you up. Nothing's gonna excite you. Nothing's going to give you the full. You'll be chasing clones. You'll be chasing clones. Conduits that make you feel good. You'll be chasing the high, chasing the hype, chasing the trend, chasing things because you have that fear still within inside of yourself. Because this is one of the main narratives. And that's what we're going to be getting into tomorrow during Friday night lectures when we get into Clone Wars. The false sense of maintaining the structure of sustaining. The urges of humanity, the demiurge, versus the reasoning and the logic of the demigod. This is where I'm reading it straight off the screen because it's on my page. This is where one learns the symmetry or the intimacy. And now they can learn to master their energy to unlock the dormancy of the creative spark, or your integrating the aspects of your soul. While separated, one is only in fear, the lower self, and they simply, as I talked about yesterday, we talked in Breaking Imitation, imitate and impute the birthing of conduits that exists in the same structure of sustain. So the longer that you stay in that situation, the longer that you stay out of your realm of your healing, the longer you stay in that realm of comfort, all you're going to be doing is imitating and imputing inside conduits inside that space to live exactly how you live so you can stay reacting the way you react. I want you to be the fucking best. In order to become the best, you got to really, everything leads back to that shadow. Getting real intimate with yourself. Not on the physical aspects of the arousal, but really understanding how to respond, learning how to respond to yourself, learning how to have recognition to yourself, and learning how to adapt to the situations. And that's what we're going to be getting into on Friday, and that's what I want you to be the best with. If you're interested within services, as we always say around this time, you're interested in services, hit me in the inbox for readings, setting up consultations, guided meditation, shadow work therapy, inner child work therapy, all of these and many, many more. GodCallAlchemistLLC.com, or hit me in the inbox. We can start that, build on that dialogue. I'll see you guys tomorrow, Friday night, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Gotta Call Alchemist, the YouTube channel. Stay tuned for the link. I'm going to be posting up in a little bit. And I want you to be the best. Take this day to what you learned from the night before in order to usher in today. How are you going to shape and mold yourself going forward? That way, when you invest into those changes when the cycle comes back to it's time for you to invest, look at the changes. How are you going to invest? I want you to be the best. I love you. We love us. Ashe.